In a city that never sleeps, even the silence of early morning can echo with horror. On May 6, 2017, in the buzzing metropolitan heart of India, Mumbai, something sinister was about to surface. As the sun slowly climbed over Navi Mumbai, the sleepy calm was shattered by an unbearable stench near the Mahape area. Commuters pinched their noses, turned their heads, but one man couldn't ignore it. The smell wasn't just foul. It was unnatural. It was death. No one suspected that what they were about to discover would unravel one of the most gruesome murder cases in the city's recent history. A frantic call was made to the police control room. Soon, a police team arrived and began scanning the source of the odor. Near a public water line, half buried in the weeds, was a plastic bag soaked in blood. When opened, officers recoiled in horror. Inside the bag was the torso of a young woman, decapitated and dismembered, missing limbs and a head. One thing stood out, a tattoo on her right shoulder, a detailed depiction of Lord Ganesha. The presence of the tattoo hinted at the victim's regional roots, likely Maharashtrian, and perhaps her faith. But that was the only clue. The body part was sent for autopsy, and police started combing the area for the remaining body parts, hoping they could retrieve enough for identification. But their search yielded nothing more. No eyewitnesses, no suspects, no vehicle sightings. Whoever did this had planned it well. The method of disposal indicated cold calculation. For now, they had a torso and a tattoo. The rest was a mystery wrapped in blood-stained plastic. Investigators faced a difficult task, identifying the victim without a face, fingerprints, or belongings. They issued public alerts and pushed the case to regional newspapers, focusing on the tattoo. If you recognize this tattoo or have any information, please contact MIDC Police Station, the announcement said. Days passed. On May 9th, a break finally came. 2 residents from Dombivli walked into the station. A woman named Kavita Dunde and her younger brother Ganesh. With trembling hands, they told the officers they believed the torso could belong to their missing sister, Priyanka Gaurav, who had been unreachable since May 5th. Priyanka had been living with her husband in Worli after a recent love marriage. Kavita explained that they used to speak daily, but from the night of May 5th, Priyanka's phone was off. Her husband, Sidhesh, had told them she had gone for a job interview at a placement agency. But when Kavita personally visited the agency, they confirmed that no woman named Priyanka Gaurav had arrived for any interview that day. That lie began to unravel everything. Coincidentally, Sidhesh and his father, Manohar, had already lodged a missing persons report on May 6th at the Worli police station. On the surface, they seemed concerned, cooperative, even helpless. But Kavita knew her sister's life had never been peaceful after her marriage. She broke down and revealed dark secrets. According to her, Priyanka was repeatedly abused, not just by her husband, but more dangerously by her mother-in-law, Madhuri Gaurav, who had never accepted Priyanka from the start. Madhuri was fiercely against the marriage. Priyanka and Sidhesh had been in a relationship for years, but their union had been met with disapproval from both sides. Still, love had triumphed. Or so it seemed. Kavita recalled how, just days after the wedding, Priyanka had visited her and whispered about the nightmares at her in-laws' home, about the emotional trauma, the insults, and even physical violence she endured. But every time someone tried to intervene, Priyanka begged them not to act. "I love him," she would say. "Everything will get better." But it didn't. One particular incident stood out. Priyanka had once returned home with a bleeding shoulder, a shard of glass lodged into her skin. Madhuri had accused her of seducing other men, and attacked her with glass bangles, yet Priyanka had refused to file a complaint. She still hoped Siddesh would choose her over his mother. Kavita and Ganesh had even gone to the police station to file a domestic abuse report, but were persuaded to stay quiet by Siddesh's father. He had promised to arrange a formal marriage ceremony to make things right. He had promised safety. In early May, Priyanka had been staying with her in-laws again. She had told Kavita she wanted to understand her new family, earn their love, and make peace. But something shifted in those final days. Her messages grew vague. Her voice sounded tense. And then, silence. When Kavita saw the newspaper ad about the torso and remembered Priyanka's Lord Ganesha tattoo, her heart sank. She rushed to the morgue. When she saw the body, she broke down. It was her. It was Priyanka. The police now had a name and a direction. But who killed Priyanka? Why was she butchered and discarded like garbage? Her mother-in-law had motive. Her husband had opportunity. But suspicion wasn't enough. Investigators began digging deeper, pulling call records, financial logs, and surveillance footage from around the area. Then came a chilling discovery. On the night of May 4th, a strange phone number had been frequently contacting Madhuri. It wasn't a relative. It wasn't a friend. It was someone from the criminal world, someone who didn't belong in family conversations. The name was Durgesh Patwa, a jeweler by profession, but someone with multiple criminal cases registered against him. And he wasn't just speaking to Madhuri once. He had been in regular contact with her for over 10 days before the murder. On the night of May 4th, their call lasted nearly 30 minutes. What were they discussing? Why had Durgesh been calling Priyanka's mother-in-law? That's when the case took a terrifying new turn. What started as a disappearance had just spiraled into a murder conspiracy. But who exactly was Durgesh Patwa? And why was he in touch with a grieving mother-in-law just days before a woman's brutal murder? As police prepared to confront him, they had no idea that what he was about to confess would shake them to the core. Durgesh Patwa didn't flinch when the police picked him up. He had the air of someone who'd been through interrogation rooms before, someone who knew the rules and how to bend them. But this time was different. The stakes were too high. When they showed him the tattooed torso and told him about the young woman's murder, a crack finally appeared in his carefully composed mask. After hours of relentless questioning, he gave in. What he said next would rewrite the entire narrative. Priyanka's murder wasn't a spontaneous crime of passion. It was a contract killing, carefully planned, viciously executed, and paid for by her own in-laws. According to Durgesh, Priyanka Gaurav, Priyanka's mother-in-law, had approached him with an offer. 1 lakh rupees in exchange for making her daughter-in-law disappear. Durgesh knew what that meant. He had a criminal background and plenty of shady contacts. Madhuri didn't want her dead immediately. She wanted a plan, one that couldn't be traced back to them. At first, Durgesh hesitated, but when money changed hands, he agreed. And then, just days before the killing, he involved a second man, Vishal Lalchand Soni, a driver with no conscience and no past worth saving. The idea wasn't just to kill Priyanka. It was to make her vanish, to send a message, and to erase her existence so thoroughly that no one would even know where to look. The family had moved into their government-allotted flat in Worli at the end of April. It was in this house, behind those newly painted walls and beneath that ordinary ceiling fan, that the Gaurav family planned a blood sacrifice to reclaim their family honor. The wedding had only been a distraction, a calculated move to prevent suspicion. On the night of May 4th, Priyanka had gone to sleep like any other night. She had no idea it would be her last. Sometime after midnight, Durgesh arrived. He had been called in secretly by Madhuri. The rest of the household, Manohar, Madhuri, and Siddesh, were all awake. They pretended everything was normal until it was time. As Priyanka slept, they smothered her with a pillow, Durgesh pressing down with calculated strength, while the others held her arms and legs to stop her from struggling. She fought. She gasped. But within minutes, it was over. Priyanka Gaurav was dead. What happened next revealed the depths of depravity the family was willing to descend to. They dragged her lifeless body to the bathroom. That's where Durgesh made another call, to Vishal. "Bring the black Santro," he said. Vishal arrived in less than 20 minutes, parking the car outside. While he waited, Durgesh and Siddesh began cutting Priyanka's body into pieces, 11 parts in total, her head in one bag, her torso in another, her limbs in a third. The bathroom tiles turned red, the air suffocating. They wrapped her in old bed sheets and cheap plastic bags. The scene was straight out of a nightmare, but for them, it was just the beginning. Once the body was packed, Vishal and Durgesh drove off separately, scattering the remains in 3 different parts of the city. The torso ended up in the Mahape pipeline. Her head, later found wrapped in a red bedsheet, was dumped in the Shahapur forest. Her limbs were thrown off a quiet roadside in Badlapur. To cover their tracks further, they burned parts of the evidence, including her clothes and some plastic remnants. The job was done. They had, in their eyes, erased Priyanka. No more questions, no more marriage, no more shame. But they had overlooked one thing: the tattoo, a small, spiritual image on her shoulder. It was this single oversight that unraveled the entire cover-up. Had Priyanka not gotten that tattoo, her identity might have never been confirmed. The case would have stayed in the cold files, one more nameless torso in the morgue. But fate had other plans. And now, with Durgesh's confession on the record, the police had what they needed. The Gaurav family was brought back in. This time, they were questioned separately, and that's when it all started to fall apart. Manohar broke first. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was pressure. But he admitted that the family had been under unbearable mental stress ever since Priyanka started demanding a public wedding and legal recognition. They had tried to silence her with intimidation. It hadn't worked. They had tried to reason with her. Still no success. When she threatened legal action, when she told Siddesh she would go to the police and report him for emotional and physical exploitation, they panicked. Madhuri called Durgesh, and the rest followed like dominoes. Siddesh, during his separate interrogation, tried to play innocent. "I loved her," he kept saying. "Why would I kill her 5 days after marrying her?" But the evidence said otherwise. His call logs, his location history, and most damning of all, his silence during the dismemberment pointed toward guilt. He hadn't stopped the crime. He had helped it. He had held down his wife's legs while she gasped for air. He had looked away as her body was cut apart in the very house they shared as newlyweds. He wasn't a husband. He was an accomplice. With the crime now fully exposed, the police raided Vishal's residence and recovered the black Santro car, still stained with faint traces of blood. Forensic experts confirmed it matched Priyanka's DNA. The bags used to dispose of her body were also traced to nearby stores, where Vishal had been captured on CCTV footage. Everything was coming together. The lies, the manipulation, the cruelty, all leading to a crime committed not out of impulse, but from a cold, heartless plan designed within the very house Priyanka had tried so hard to call home. And yet, as the legal process began, one chilling question still echoed in the investigation room. Why didn't anyone stop it? There were so many chances. Siddesh could have said no. Manohar could have walked away. Madhuri could have forgiven. But no one did. Their silence was as sharp as the knife that tore through Priyanka's flesh. And in that silence, a young woman's voice was permanently erased from the world. But was the Gaurav family telling the whole truth? Or was there still someone else, someone watching from the shadows, who hadn't yet come forward? As investigators dug deeper, one final revelation was still waiting to surface. The Gaurav family had confessed, and the accomplices had been arrested. The police had the murder weapon, the vehicle, the body parts, and even the motive. It was one of the most chillingly complete murder cases they had seen in years. Yet, as the dust settled, a gnawing discomfort remained. Something still didn't sit right. Officers revisited Durgesh's testimony. His story had clarity, too much clarity. Step-by-step precision, emotionless delivery. It didn't feel like the story of a man who had reluctantly agreed to a murder for money. It felt like the story of someone who had done this before. The investigation team decided to probe deeper into Durgesh's background. They discovered he wasn't just a small-time crook. He had a string of prior complaints: extortion, intimidation, and suspected involvement in another woman's disappearance in 2014. That case was never solved. Was Durgesh just a tool in Priyanka's case, or was he a predator drawn to vulnerable situations? When police searched his rented workshop, they found tools, cleavers, plastic wraps, surgical gloves, all neatly stored. It was like a miniature butcher house. Durgesh hadn't just participated in the killing, he had perfected the act, and he had likely done it before. This new discovery added a layer of darkness to the case. Priyanka's murder wasn't just the result of a family's shame. It had attracted a man who enjoyed the process, who treated a human life like disposable meat. But no matter how deeply police investigated, they found no other clear link to previous crimes. Priyanka, it seemed, was the one caught at the center of both a family's obsession with social image and a killer's thirst for precision. What made her murder so monstrous wasn't just that she was killed, but that so many people participated, and none of them stopped. During the trial, the courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists, and ordinary citizens who had followed the story with horror. Kavita, Priyanka's sister, stood firm as the prosecution's key witness. Her testimony painted a portrait of a kind-hearted, fiercely loving woman who only ever wanted a family, acceptance, and peace. She described the silent suffering, the humiliations, and Priyanka's tireless belief that love could fix broken people. The judge was visibly moved. So were many in the courtroom, but no one more than Ganesh, who sat in silence, fists clenched, the weight of his sister's death burning into his soul. One by one, the guilty were sentenced. Durgesh Patwa, the butcher of the crime, was given life imprisonment with no parole. Vishal Soni, the driver who helped dispose of the body, received 20 years for aiding and abetting. The Gaurav family, Madhuri, Manohar, and Siddesh, were each sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiracy to murder, destruction of evidence, and abetment. Madhuri, the orchestrator, was labeled the cold heart of the conspiracy. Siddesh, the betraying husband, never once made eye contact with Kavita or Ganesh during the entire trial. When the verdict was read, Kavita finally wept, not out of grief, but out of relief. Justice hadn't brought Priyanka back, but it had given her voice back to the world. Her name would no longer be whispered as a victim. It would be spoken with reverence, remembered as the girl who dared to love, dared to fight, and paid the ultimate price. A small foundation was later set up in her name, offering support to women escaping abusive marriages and coercive relationships. Priyanka's tragedy had become a symbol, a scar on the city's conscience. In the aftermath, reporters asked Siddesh the same question again and again. Why did you marry her if you were planning to kill her? He never answered. Theories abound. Some say it was part of a bigger plan, to prevent Priyanka from filing a legal complaint. Others believe he did love her once, but lacked the courage to fight his own family. Either way, his silence remained a bitter reminder of the cowardice that had destroyed a life so full of hope and promise. Priyanka's story spread across social media, spawning debates about love marriages, honor killings, and the role of in-laws in young couples' lives. People from across the country weighed in. Some saw it as a failure of law enforcement to intervene earlier. Others blamed societal pressure on caste and control. But above all, it became a haunting tale of how love can turn lethal in the wrong hands. Her smiling photos were now posters held at rallies. Her voice echoed in seminars on domestic abuse, and her name became a pledge for others. Never stay silent. As for Kavita and Ganesh, life would never return to normal. But they had done what so many victims' families never get to do. They fought until the end, stood tall against intimidation, and brought every last accomplice to justice. Still, on quiet nights, Kavita often replays those last conversations with Priyanka. The laughs, the shared dreams, and the desperate fear in her voice when she said, "Maybe this family will accept me one day." That day never came, but justice did. And yet, even after the verdict, one question remains, haunting and unanswered. How many more Priyankas are out there, trapped in smiling family photos, hiding bruises behind makeup, and praying that love will save them before it's too late?